for Newland.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. Can the Minister update the House on how the Marshall Liberal government has been keeping South Australian schools safe and strong?
The Minister for Education.
Thank the member for the question. It's a tremendously important question because at the heart of what we do in the Education Department is every student, every child and young person in every school and preschool in South Australia getting every opportunity to learn. The enabler of a successful and happy life, of course, is so dependent on a good education. And throughout the coronavirus pandemic around the world, what we have seen is students, whether vulnerable or not, their education has been disrupted. It's been particularly damaging to the futures of many vulnerable children and young people around the world. Children whose academic growth has been dramatically disenfranchised through being kept home from school, through lockdowns at extended periods of time, and of course the extraordinarily powerful activity that is learning and education has been disrupted for months, potentially for years. We know in our schools, even in South Australia, we have students who don't get the support that they ideally need at home, where it is not necessarily the safest place for them to be. There are many students who we need to be at school as much as possible so that they can not only get their learning, but so that their well-being is supported. And in other states where they've had extended and protracted lockdowns and no opportunity for them to be at school, and indeed in other countries, that has been a dramatic, deleterious effect on those vulnerable children. But indeed, and there are many university studies over the last 6 months that have already demonstrated the impact on the loss of learning that has happened for all students where this lockdown has happened. There are some students who have really taken to learning at home, but I tell you what, it is so hard for teachers to effectively teach literacy skills, reading and writing skills to a 5 or a 6 or a 7-year-old child over a computer screen. It's really hard for a 17 or an 18-year-old doing Year 11 or 12, trying to get their science practicals in a proper place to get their assessments done in time for their Year 12 marks to be able to be assessed from a home environment without access to specialist facilities and labs. So the South Australian Education Department has worked extraordinarily hard alongside, in close collaboration with the Catholic education system and the independent schools sector in South Australia to ensure that we are working with SA Police and Professor Nicola Spurrier. We are operating on the health advice provided by SA Health. We've been able to keep schools open as much as anyone. In fact, South Australian students through 2020 had the least disruption to their schooling pretty much of any students in Australia, and that puts them pretty much in line with any students in the world. We had a loss of a week at the end of Term 1 for some professional learning opportunities for teachers. We had some days in November, obviously. And we also had some schools where there was a significant impact because of a localised infection issue at their school. And those staff responded so well. And across the Education Department and in our non-government schools, our teachers and our education staff responded quickly, nimbly, deftly, and with the interests of the children and young people in our schools and preschools at the heart of everything that they did. And we are all, I know, so grateful to them. But what they have achieved is a continuity of learning throughout the school year last year. And that continues this year. There will, sir, continue to be challenges. We're very pleased that most of the restrictions that were in place during 2020 have now been able to be lifted in our schools and preschools. There are some site-specific concerns in some areas that remain, and there are some activities that remain. We have introduced QR codes in all of our schools and preschools, and indeed all of our schools and non-government schools now have those. For staff, for adult visitors, our students, SA Health, I'm very pleased to say, SA Health is very pleased with the attendance data that means our students it's not necessary. We're continuing to have increased cleaning, we're continuing to have increased provision of hygiene products, and our education staff and our education department and the Marshall Liberal government is working every day to keep our schools safe and strong, to deliver world-class education for our children and young people here in South Australia.
Order.